In a landmark decision, the Supreme Court has sharply limited the president's power to impose tariffs under national emergency authority. The case focused on former President Trump's use of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA, to levy sweeping tariffs worldwide. The ruling reasserts Congress's constitutional authority over trade and taxes, challenging a key pillar of the Trump administration's America First agenda. At issue: can a president declare a national emergency to bypass Congress and reshape trade policy? A coalition of importers, business groups, and state attorneys general argued this was executive overreach, violating the Constitution's separation of powers. The court's decision draws a clear boundary, redefining presidential power for years to come. The impact is immediate, potentially rolling back billions in tariffs and forcing refunds to thousands of companies. America's trading partners see hope for a more stable trade environment, while supporters of the tariffs decry the ruling as judicial activism. The debate over America's trade future is far from over, but the Supreme Court has set a new standard for executive authority. The nation now faces both immediate economic consequences and a long-term shift in how it engages with the world. To understand this ruling, we must revisit the policies that led here. President Trump, self-styled as Tariff Man, broke with decades of free trade, using tariffs as his main tool to protect American jobs and pressure trading partners. The legal weapon, IEEPA, a 1977 law meant for true national emergencies, not general economic disputes. Trump's administration used IEEPA to justify tariffs on a wide range of goods, bypassing Congress. Critics warned this stretched the law's intent, giving the president unchecked power to tax imports. The result: trade wars, higher costs for manufacturers, retaliatory tariffs on farmers, and price hikes for consumers. The economic pain united businesses and states to challenge the legality of IEEPA tariffs. Their lawsuits set the stage for today's Supreme Court showdown. The outcome will shape the limits of presidential power in trade for years to come. The Supreme Court case combined lawsuits from businesses and states against the federal government. The government argued IEEPA gave the president broad discretion to act in emergencies, especially on national security. Opponents countered that the Constitution gives Congress, not the president, the power to regulate commerce and impose taxes. Lower courts issued conflicting rulings, some siding with businesses, others with the executive branch. This legal confusion brought the issue to the Supreme Court for a final answer. The stakes: a decision upholding presidential power could permanently shift the balance between Congress and the White House. Striking down the tariffs would reassert congressional authority and limit executive overreach. The justices faced a pivotal question: should the president have unilateral power to reshape trade policy under the guise of emergency? Billions of dollars and the future of American trade law hung in the balance. The court's answer would redefine the boundaries of power in U.S. governance. The Supreme Court ruled 6-3 that using IEEPA for broad trade tariffs was an overreach of executive authority. Chief Justice Roberts wrote that while the president has significant power under IEEPA, it's not unlimited. Congress alone regulates commerce. Business leaders and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce hailed the decision as a victory for the rule of law and economic stability. The ruling means illegal tariffs must be rolled back and refunds issued, affecting over $50 billion in duties. Supporters of the tariffs criticized the decision as weakening America's ability to protect its industries. Dissenting justices argued the court should have deferred to the executive on national security. The split highlights deep divisions over the balance of power in a complex global economy. The debate over tariffs and presidential authority is far from settled. The Supreme Court's decision brings immediate relief to thousands of American companies that import goods. With tariffs invalidated, businesses expect lower costs, potential price drops for consumers, and renewed investment. Industries relying on global supply chains, like electronics and automotive, welcome the change, hoping for job growth. However, workers in protected sectors, such as steel and aluminum, fear renewed foreign competition and possible layoffs. Farmers, hit hard by retaliatory tariffs, see hope for regaining lost export markets. The ruling doesn't remove foreign tariffs overnight. but it's a step toward easing trade tensions. Most importantly, the decision reduces uncertainty, allowing businesses to plan and invest with greater confidence. Stability in trade policy is crucial for long-term economic growth. The business community now looks to Congress and the administration for clear, predictable rules. The financial fallout is massive. Tens of billions in tariff refunds must be paid to American businesses. For many, this cash infusion will help pay debts and reinvest in growth after years of strain. The refund process will be complex, requiring detailed claims and legal expertise. The government faces a major budget impact as funds flow out of the Treasury. With tariffs gone, companies can adjust pricing and strategy, potentially lowering costs for consumers and boosting competitiveness. The ruling signals to global investors that the U.S. legal system enforces limits on executive power. This strengthens confidence in the American market's fairness and predictability. In the long run, restoring rule of law may be the most valuable outcome of all. Legal scholars call the ruling a landmark for the separation of powers. Professor Lawrence Tribe says it reasserts Congress's role in trade and curbs the president's ability to bypass economic law. Economists like Adam Posen predict a modest boost to growth and lower inflation, but warn that supply chains will take time to adjust. Trade experts note the decision strengthens America's credibility in demanding fair play from other countries. Jennifer Hillman of the Council on Foreign Relations says the U.S. can now insist others follow the rules, having reaffirmed its own. Some national security analysts worry the ruling could limit the president's flexibility to counter economic threats. They argue for a new legislative consensus on modern trade tools that balance security and constitutional limits. The expert consensus: the ruling is a reset, not a cure-all. America's trade challenges remain, but the process for addressing them is now clearer. The next steps depend on Congress and the White House working together. The president still has tools to influence trade, but they're more targeted and require due process. Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act allows tariffs if imports threaten national security, but only after investigation. Section 301 of the Trade Act lets the U.S. retaliate against unfair trade practices, again requiring evidence and procedure. These laws demand transparency and public input, unlike the broad emergency powers of IEEPA. The Supreme Court's ruling forces the executive to use these more accountable channels. Congress may now seek to modernize trade laws, clarifying definitions and creating new tools for today's challenges. The focus shifts back to lawmakers to craft effective, constitutionally sound trade policy. The conversation on trade is far from over, it's just moved to a new arena. This Supreme Court decision is a powerful reaffirmation of checks and balances in American government. By limiting emergency powers, the court has reminded Congress of its duty to regulate commerce and oversee the executive. The ruling calls for a renewed debate on the best path for U.S. trade policy, protectionism or open markets. The court didn't pick a policy, but insisted on a democratic process, debate, compromise, and lawmaking. Now, voters must demand clear trade strategies, Congress must reclaim its authority, and the president must respect constitutional limits. The strength of American democracy lies in this dynamic balance of power. Today's decision wasn't about a trade war winner, it was about preserving the system that sustains the republic. The future of U.S. trade will be shaped not by decree, but by the people's representatives.